Guys, I cheated while making my last wine batch. Cheated, how you may ask? So just to give you a little context, I like to use things naturally. So make sure you use juice, water, sugar, yeast, all typical ingredients that you would have in the fridge that you would regularly consume. And I avoided toxic chemicals like clay to make your alcohol clear up. The clay, what it does, basically, it takes the yeast and it drags them to the bottom of the jar, and that makes your alcohol clearer. However, I just do the natural cold crashing, and what this is, I would have to put my alcohol inside the fridge, and this would make the yeast dormant, and the yeast would go down to the bottom of the jar and it would just lay there because of the cold temperature, and this would clear up the top of the jar. Instead of using clay to clear the alcohol, I would just cold crash. I've tried once using unflavored jello, however, I left it too long and the alcohol actually had the texture of jello. Therefore, I'm sticking to cold crashing. I don't have to buy anything. It's simple. Just put it in the fridge or in a cold environment. And to make it red or the color that I'd like my wine to be, I add fruits, I add the juices. However, this time when I used cranberry juice, it wasn't working. The fermentation got stuck, and I assumed that it was because of the preservatives inside the cranberry. So I removed a lot of cranberry juice and replaced it with water. And even after diluting the wash, the fermentation was still stuck. So I diluted it. I removed even more cranberry juice from the wash and added even more water. But at this point, the wash was no longer red. It was a faint, sort of transparent red color. And it wasn't pretty, therefore I added, and this is when I say it's artificial, I added food coloring. I typically would have rather had the red color by adding natural fruits or the juices, but it was not working. Therefore, I added food coloring, and surprise, surprise, it's still pretty sweet. When your wash is pretty sweet after 5 days, this means that the fermentation is still stuck. Therefore, I did a little test, and yesterday I tested the pH of my cranberry wine. I have it here. And as a matter of fact, I also made a blueberry wine, and it's also sweeter than it should be. This one, honestly, since you see a lot of bubbles, I was expecting this fermentation to be done. However, it's also been 5 days and it's sweet. The fermentation is not done yet. Therefore, I thought, could it be something else than the preservatives? Well, I believe so. I believe that it's the pH as well. And the pH optimally has to be at 5.2. And as I tested the pH of both of these mashes, they were around 3. So I used a digital pH meter, and I realized that the pH was low. Therefore, my goal is to increase the pH, but not with baking soda, because I've tried that in the past and the taste was horrible. I had to throw the whole batch. And I do not want to throw these batches because it has so much potential when it's made of real fruits. So I bought calcium carbonate, and this will increase the pH levels from 3 to, I'm gonna get it around 4 or 5. I don't want it too high either because that can affect the taste of your homebrew. Therefore, I'm getting it soon, and as soon as I have it, I will add 1 teaspoon of calcium carbonate because I have 1 gallon. And rule of thumb is to add 2 teaspoons for 5 gallons. Of alcohol. And next time, to avoid food coloring, what I'm gonna do is try this cherry sauce, which is kind of odd to add in a drink, but I will to affect the color, or this juice here. And the key is to add red ingredients that do not have too much preservatives. So avoid at all costs Coca-Cola or any soft drinks. You also have preservatives in drinks. However, I make cider with apple juice, and there are preservatives in apple juice. However, when you look at the ingredient list, you have to make sure that the preservatives are not at the top, because the top ingredients are the ones that are most present inside your product. And the lower you go, the lower percentage of that item is inside the product. However, I would also suggest looking at pH, because pH does affect your wash, and avoid all acidic fruits. Here is a little bit of information on the pH of fruits. And what I see is that mango has a good pH. So it'd be interesting to make mango wine, for example. Drop a comment below and let me know if you'd like me to make mango wine. The pH is at 5, which is perfect. It's just gonna be a little bit yellow, therefore hopefully it doesn't look like what's found in the toilet bowl. Another fruit that would be really good actually for red wine is watermelon. So watermelon is more alkaline than acid. However, there's not much watermelon juice, and I wonder why that is. I can buy a full watermelon and puree the fruit, and once the fruit is pureed, add it to the wash to make it or to give it a little red color. So I talked about pH today and preservatives. However, there are other reasons that can cause a stuck fermentation, and this is if the environment is too cold because the yeast gets dormant. However, it's roughly 26 degrees Celsius where I am currently. It's summer and it's not the temperature, and it's so odd because the airlock has been working all week long, the blueberry one especially, so do not let the airlock fool you. When you see bubbles in the airlock, that means that it's a byproduct of the alcohol being made, but it could be made at a really slow pace, and I just need to accelerate the process at this point because it doesn't look like the fermentation is going to resume. My solution, honestly, and my typical way to go is to use more water than anything else. So far, best results have been with water and apple juice. It's almost a guarantee that your fermentation will work. You just have to make sure that you do not add too much sugar. The optimal sugar or starting gravity for your wine or beer should be roughly 0.60 to 1.1 on the higher end. However, the sweeter you want your alcohol to be, the more sugar. And the more sugar you add, the stronger your alcohol will be at the end. If you're more of a dry wine person, you can add less sugar, but just note that your percentage of wine will be lower at the end. And I'm curious to know, does anyone make your wine with blueberry or with cranberry juice? Do you use other type of fruits inside your homebrew? And I know that if you'd like to have flavor, but you don't want to risk having a stuck fermentation, there are extracts. You can add extracts separately. So once your fermentation is done, I would add it at the end because at the beginning, the yeast is eating the sugar. Therefore, at the end, when all the sugar is eaten by the yeast, that's when you can add the extract for the taste to be more noticeable. Because what I expect from cranberry and blueberry juice is not to taste the cranberry and blueberry because of the fermentation. It'll be more of an aftertaste as it is in other wine. It's at the back of your palate. And one note is that when you're adding fruits inside your wash, these fruits will typically float on top of your jar. Therefore, it's easier to remove them after a few days to extract the fruits from the jar to avoid the rotten flavor. Super important when you're making alcohol out of juice is to read the ingredients and to make sure that everything is favorable to the yeast. And for example, in this cherry sauce, it starts off with water, then sugar, and the third ingredient is ketchup. Therefore, it's kind of questionable to add ketchup in your homebrew, but hopefully when I taste it, it tastes more sweet like cherry sauce and less like ketchup. And if you'd like to have a step-by-step guide on when to add your juice, when to add the sugar, when to add your yeast, you can book a class. The link is in the description below. And if you found this video valuable, share with a friend. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.